Hello and welcome. It's 10 a.m. on Tuesday, the 13th of January. You're tuned in to our mid-morning newscast here on Arirang TV. Thanks ever so much for joining us. I'm Mark Broome. Let's take a look at what's making the headlines. Nearly 9 months after the disaster, Korean lawmakers approve a special bill that will compensate the families of the victims of the Sewol-ho ferry sinking. A leading publishing firm in the United States rejects Japan's request to alter its textbooks concerning the description of wartime sex slaves. Plus, the Twitter and YouTube accounts of U.S. Central Command, which handles American military operations in the Middle East, have been suspended after being hacked by a group claiming to be supporters of Islamic State. Our top story this morning, President Park Geun-hye is getting down to business on this Tuesday, less than 24 hours after she announced how she plans to run the country during her third year in office. Officials say the president began receiving status reports from 6 government offices this morning. They are the Finance, Labour, Agriculture, Land and Maritime Affairs Ministries, along with the Fair Trade Commission. The status reports have been drawn up under the theme of strengthening economic fundamentals and striking the right balance between domestic demand and exports. These policy briefs will continue through next Thursday. And it was on Monday that President Park Geun-hye had her New Year's press conference, and that's where she laid out her plans for her third year in office, and taking us through some of the key points on inter-Korean ties, the economy, and a possible reshuffling of her administration. Here's our presidential office correspondent, Chae-sun.
Addressing the nation on Monday, President Park pledged to lay the groundwork for peaceful unification on the Korean peninsula, as this year marks the 70th anniversary of the division of the two Koreas with their liberation from Japanese colonial rule. As a means to improve inter-Korean ties, President Park expressed her hope for holding reunions for families separated by the Korean War around the time of the Lunar New Year holiday next month. The president then said she's open to talks with her North Korean counterpart as long as it would help the two Koreas peacefully unite.
그 비핵화 같은 거 이거가 전혀 해결이 안 되는데 이게 전제 조건은 아니지만 이것이 해결이 전혀 안 되는데 평화 통일을 얘기할 수가 없거든요.
President Park spent a large portion of her time talking about her economic innovation plan, saying this year will offer Korea a final chance to leap forward. She then told the nation she was sorry for the confusion that followed documents leaked from her office and vowed to ensure such acts are not repeated. Stressing how the prosecution has found no proof of her aides intervening in state affairs, the president said she has no plans to immediately replace any of them. As for her chief of staff, she said now is not the time to let him go.
이제 지금 여러 가지로 그 당면한 현안들이 많이 있어서 그 문제들을 좀 이렇게 수습을 먼저 해야 되지 않겠느냐. 그래서 그 일들이 끝나고 나서 또 결정할 문제라고 그렇게 생각을 합니다.
It's clear what President Park's main goal is for this year, revitalizing the economy. But her firm position about her aides' alleged abuse of power and determination not to replace them anytime soon may deter parliamentary cooperation to secure legislative approval of the economy-related bills. Chae-sun, Arirang News.
Now, as Yoo-sun was just reporting there, a very large and significant portion of President Park's annual conference was focused on ways to reform and upgrade Korea's economic fundamentals. For more details, here's our Lee Ji-yoon.
노동시장 개혁은 선택이 아니라 필수적인 생존 전략입니다.
Carrying out reforms in various economic sectors is President Park's #1 priority this year. And those reforms are part of her 3-year economic innovation plan, which she says will help keep Korea's low economic growth from falling into a long, drawn-out slump.
내수와 수출 이런 게 다 균형이 잡혀서 온기가 돌게 하는 그런 여러 가지 정책들을 올해 아주 모든 힘을 다해서 부지런히 실시를 하게 되면 우리가 지금 3.8%로 정부는 성장을 할 수 있다고 보는데 우리가 할 수 있다고 생각을 합니다.
In order to see such economic growth, the president said related entities such as trade unions and management must work together. As for the possibility of a cut in the nation's key interest rate, she plans to consult with macroeconomic policymakers to make a timely decision when needed. Easing regulations aimed at boosting the economy is also on the president's to-do list.
올해 2단계 규제 개혁을 성공적으로 추진하고 나면 기업과 외국인 투자자들은 더욱 자유롭게 투자할 수 있게 되고
And she believes that will lead to creating more jobs and eventually reviving the economy. But whether these measures will prop up the economy in the end remains to be seen. Some skeptics point out that the president's policies lack provisions to really help those with heavy financial burdens. Lee Jun, Arirang News.
Now staying with domestic politics, and Korea's National Assembly approved close to 100 bills on Monday, including a special bill covering the compensation of families directly affected by last year's Sewol-ho ferry sinking. Our Park Geun-hye reports.
The National Assembly has finally passed a special compensation bill for the victims and bereaved families of last April's Sewol-ho ferry disaster. It was passed on this Monday by a vote of 171 in favor to 3 against with 7 abstentions. The bill calls for a committee formed under the Prime Minister's office to decide on the terms of compensation. In addition, a trauma center will be set up in Ansan, the hometown of the high school students most affected by the tragedy, to provide them with psychiatric and mental health services. The Assembly also passed legislation aimed at promoting Korea's cruise industry, including allowing onboard casinos and developing port facilities for leisure vessels. A resolution to launch a parliamentary investigation into overseas energy development projects by previous administrations was also adopted. Lawmakers, however, delayed action on 2 key items originally on today's agenda. The so-called Kim Myung-lan Act, a comprehensive anti-corruption bill aimed at punishing public officials for bribery, was tabled until next month's extraordinary session after lawmakers from both political camps agreed it needed further review. Also delayed was the selection of special inspectors in charge of rooting out corruption among presidential aides. Bipartisan bickering kept lawmakers from selecting the candidates, who now will be chosen next month. Park Geun-hye, Arirang News.
A US-based publishing firm has rejected a request from Japan for it to change information in one of its high school history textbooks, which states that women were forced into sexual slavery by Japanese soldiers during World War II. The Japanese daily Sankei Shimbun reported Monday that officials from the Japanese consulate in New York met with employees from publishing giant McGraw-Hill, but the company didn't respond to Japan's request. The textbook in question, which is titled Traditions and Encounters, A Global Perspective on the Past, says the Japanese army forcibly recruited and conscripted as many as 200,000 young women and girls to serve in military brothels. The Japanese government first made the request late last year, saying the information was inaccurate and parts of the textbook were not in line with Tokyo's stance. Now, North Korea is believed to have recently changed the frequency band for its state television to broadcast in hyper-definition quality. The North halted the frequency band that only allowed broadcasting in standard definition quality last weekend and is now transmitting broadcasts through a band that also allows HD quality. The frequency range has changed, but broadcasts are still being transmitted using SD signals. Experts say North Korea is probably testing HD broadcasting. Pyongyang is believed to have started digital broadcasting in 2012. Now, in the global headlines today, we begin with news that the social media sites of the US military have been hacked by apparent sympathizers of the group that calls itself Islamic State. We're going to connect live to Eunice Kim for more on this story. So, Eunice, no major damage or data breach seems to have occurred here, but this is still a major embarrassment for the U.S. military.
Yeah, that's right, Mark. We are talking about the Twitter and YouTube accounts of U.S. Central Command, also known as CENTCOM, that were hacked for a time. They were suspended for a few hours after authorities came to know of it. U.S. officials said the sites were compromised for about 30 minutes, during which time the hackers, signing off as ISIS, an alternate acronym of the Islamic State group, posted messages like, "American soldiers, we are coming, watch your back." CENTCOM called it an act of data vandalism, adding that no classified information was posted, nor did it have any impact on operational procedures. The timing, though, was curious, as the hacking happened as President Barack Obama was giving a speech on cybersecurity, in which he said major breaches like the Sony hack attack served as reminders of America's enormous vulnerabilities.
Well, it just goes to show that the U.S. still has a lot of work to do on cybersecurity, and it's obvious that the Islamic State is no stranger to social media, given that it posts so many videos and pictures on those kind of sites. But there have been reports that are raising some alarm in Italy. They say that the Vatican could be on the hit list of these Islamic extremists after what, the awful events we saw in Paris.
Right, and Israeli state TV was the one that reported this possibility on Sunday, that the Holy See could be the next target of a deadly Islamist attack, and it cited U.S. intelligence sources. But both the Vatican and Rome's police force are downplaying the report. The Vatican spokesman saying that it will show caution, but that it did not receive any specific threats. And also, head of Rome's anti-terror police squad said he had no evidence to back such claims, but that they would be at a maximum level of alert.
And Eunice, it isn't only the Vatican that's on very high alert in Europe at the moment. Paris, of course, being on top of that list. And let's look at what's happening really out of France. That huge, unprecedented unity rally, which we saw in the French capital, was really something to behold on our TV screens. But the US is feeling the heat, the diplomatic heat anyway, for not sending a high-profile leader to such an occasion.
Yeah, that's right. If not President Barack Obama, then why not Vice President Joe Biden? Some are going so far as to call this oversight an act of disrespect from a country that highly regards free speech. And while the White House did respond, it is insisting that nothing has changed in its support for its oldest ally.
Some have asked whether or not the United States should have sent someone with a higher profile than the ambassador to France. And I think it's fair to say that we should have sent someone with a higher profile to be there. That said, there is no doubt that the American people and this administration stand foursquare behind our allies in France as they face down this threat.
Ernest went on to explain that there was not enough notice ahead of the rally to install the necessary security. And belatedly, America's top diplomat John Kerry did announce he is heading to Paris at the end of this week for talks on countering extremist violence. Meanwhile, France is boosting its security across the country, deploying 10,000 troops through Tuesday amid suspicions that sleeper cells were activated following, of course, last week's 3 days of terror.
And as police and military forces are mobilized, the magazine Charlie Hebdo has promised to push on, despite the fact that much of its leadership and all its cartoonists were murdered in cold blood when those terrorists stormed their editorial meeting last week. But the first issue since the attacks is still going to be coming out. The next issue comes out on Wednesday.
That's right, tomorrow, and it will be released in 16 different languages with at least 1 million copies in this print run compared to the usual 60,000 that the magazine sees. Surviving members of the Charlie Hebdo have been working at the offices of newspaper Libération, and the front cover has been revealed. As promised, it features a caricature of Prophet Muhammad. You're seeing there holding a sign that reads, "I am Charlie," with a banner above him reading, "All is forgiven."
Okay, well, it's going to be interesting to see the reaction to that magazine cover. Well, thank you very much, Eunice, and we'll see you back at noon.
See you then.
Now, aside from the odd IPO here or there by some big-name companies, major headlines from the Korean stock market were few and far between last year. But market watchers think it's going to be a different story this year. For more on how prices could move one way or the other and what investors should look out for, here's our Song Ji-sun.
2014 was a lackluster year for the Korean stock market. The benchmark Kospi index closed the year at 1915, 100 points lower than it started, a year after being trapped in the 200-point range and below the 2,100-point barrier. This year, with the country's economic recovery picking up pace, market analysts expect the Kospi to break out of this pattern and top 2,200, most probably in third or fourth quarter. Among the main factors setting the tone for the market were the Fed's decision to raise its key interest rate and the performance of Samsung Electronics, which account for 14% of the overall market capitalization. Many analysts believe the Fed's rate hike will have a limited impact on the bourse, but the big question about Samsung is whether it can shore up its poor smart performance from the third quarter of last year.
We are expecting a low of 1870 and a high of 2260. There could be some adjustments in the first half on rate changes in the U.S., but the stock market will rise at a moderate rate in the second half.
One main theme for the market this year will be dividend payments. Last year, big-name IPOs took center stage, partly due to the listing of Tail Industries, the de facto holding company of the Samsung Group, and its affiliate Samsung SDS. But the number of companies seeking IPOs will drop by half to around 30 this year. Among them are low-cost airlines Jeju Air and Air Busan, and Hyundai Group's advertising arm, Innocean. The focus this year will be on how shareholders benefit from a government policy on increasing dividend payments. Policymakers have voiced concerns that too many companies are stocking away too much money for reserves and that Korea's dividend payout ratio is lower than that of emerging or developed markets.
We will seek to increase the influence of shareholders in deciding dividend plans to make them more reasonable and help institutional investors to become more involved in the process.
Now, another point to look out for in 2015 is whether the Korean market can be included in the developed market category on the MSCI index, which is an important factor when global fund managers draw up their investment portfolios. Korea has been regarded as an emerging market, largely because of its currency's limited convertibility and limits on foreign investors' ability to trade in securities. The question of whether Seoul has made progress on improving investment conditions will be decided in June. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
Now, the combination of skyrocketing sales, plunging oil prices and newly found consumer confidence in the United States means automakers are licking their lips at the thought of this year's North American International Auto Show that's about to kick off in Detroit. Dozens of new models will be getting their first public airing in what promises to be a great event in America's Motor City. Kim Ji-yeon reports.
The economic recovery in the United States and tumbling oil prices are having a profound impact on the latest auto trends presented at this year's North American International Auto Show in Detroit. Convertibles are making a comeback, mainly due to stronger consumer spending as Americans enjoy the fruits of the strengthening recovery.
But we got a lot of exciting products. So, we've got 3 new 6 Series behind us. The US market is the largest one for these cars. The convertible, around 60-odd% of all of those that we sell are in the United States. So I think that will be a very strong product during the year.
Electric and hybrid models are also key trends this year, with more stringent environment rules coming in around the world. General Motors will debut a new version of its plug-in hybrid Chevrolet Volt, the model's first update in 5 years. Korea's Hyundai Motor will also reveal new hybrid versions of its Sonata sedan to boost its lagging U.S. market share. Unfavorable currency conditions, namely the weak Japanese yen, have been frustrating Hyundai, despite the fact that it posted record sales of 1.3 million units in the U.S. last year. Another popular category that has a firm place in the hearts of North American drivers is a pickup truck.
As soon as the oil prices drop, they automatically go back to what they're comfortable with. So I think as long as prices stay low, the potential for SUVs and trucks is probably better than we've seen in several years.
The North American International Auto Show opens to the public on Saturday and runs through January 25th at Detroit's Kobo Center. Kim Jeon, Arirang News.
Now back here in Korea, and the nation's biggest and brightest were out in force last night for the annual Korea Image Awards. Prizes were dished out to the organizations, brands or people that best represented Korea over the past 12 months. So, who were the winners at this year's event? Our Connie Lee was there, and she filed this report.
So who or what did the best job in promoting Korea this past year? According to one source, it's Korean cosmetics company Amore Pacific. The company was given the Korea Image Stepping Stone Award this year at the 11th CICI Korea ceremony, hosted by the Korea Image Communication Institute. Amore Pacific was awarded for best representing Korean beauty to the world with its cosmetics brands such as Sarasu and Laneige.
We will continue to work hard to make this world more beautiful and happier.
Another honoree was none other than Chinese actress Tang Wei, who was given the Korea Image Stepping Stone Bridge Award for her efforts in promoting Korean culture. She's best known by locals for her role in the 2010 film Late Autumn, directed by her now husband Kim Tae-yong.
This year is the year of the sheep. Born in the year of the sheep myself, I feel like getting this award is a great start to this new year.
And last but not least, the Korea Image Budding Youth Award went to Olympic gold medalist Shim Seok-hee. This 17-year-old short track sensation brought home the gold, silver, and bronze at the 2014 Sochi Winter Olympics. The annual event was attended by 600 people, including Korean actors and dignitaries alike, such as newly appointed U.S. Ambassador to Korea, Mark Lippert.
The image of Korea, it's so positive around the world, but it's also such a hard-working image. But I was just overwhelmed by the warmth and the hospitality shown by the Korean people.
Previous winners of these awards include Samsung Electronics' Galaxy smartphone, singer Psy, and UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon.
I think more than anything, Korean people make the most impact on how Korea is viewed to the world.
Connie Lee, Arirang News.
Well, today is shaping up to be a mild winter day. A pleasant weather is in store to be outdoors, and sunny skies are on tap most parts this morning, but it seems to be cloudy in Seoul with clouds passing by in the upper regions, and other areas should also notice increasing clouds as the day moves along. But people in the east have been suffering from the dry conditions with a dry weather advisory in place for more than a month now, so please take good care of your health. With that, here are the readings for today. Now, the high in Seoul will climb up to 5, which is about 3 degrees higher than seasonal averages, while Daegu and Gwangju should peak at 9, and Busan will reach 11 this afternoon. And as for the other regions, Jeju Island will rise to 11, while Daejeon and Dokdo will be getting up to 7 and 8, respectively. Now, next couple of days will be even milder than today, but it seems like we have a mix of rain and snow in the forecast on Friday evening, but it's forecast to be a very light one. Now that's all for Korea, and here's international weather for viewers around the world.
Well, that's all we have for now. Plenty more stories online, arirang.co.kr/news, and also worth checking out our smartphone application. We'll be back with our next newscast at noon Korea time. Until then, goodbye.